The Columbus Blue Jackets are slumping at the worst possible time, but they're still in the thick of the playoff race. Jay Forster of Locked On Blue Jackets joins us to discuss what they have to do to get into the playoffs, coming up next on today's Locked On NHL Podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gil Martin here. Welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Blue Jackets, Jay Forster. And Jay, rough time right now for the Blue Jackets. They are slumping at the worst possible time. Right after a big streak, what's been the big contrast between the winning streak they had and now the slump?
God, if I knew that, I would be the richest man in the world, I think. Or I would be the poorest man in the world, because I would pay a not insignificant amount of money to figure out what went wrong in the space of like 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. Like literally 2.5 weeks ago, the Blue Jackets set either an NHL record or a franchise record for like the most number of games in a row allowing fewer than 20 shots on goal, right? Like they had 3 or 4 games where they allowed, like they held the Tampa Bay Lightning to 17 shots on goal or something like that, right? And I was like, oh, cool, the team is back. They slumped a little coming out of the Olympic break. Everything's great. We're turning it on. And then I don't know whether that game against the Islanders, that 1-0 shutout, just kind of broke them. And it's been, since then, it's looked like they've been skating through concrete. I don't get it. And here's the thing, is that there's probably a bunch of reasons for it, right? Like, it's the end of the year. Everyone's tired. Unfortunately, every team is tired. Not a good excuse. I think guys are hurt. I think Marchenko is hurt. I think Monahan is hurt. I wouldn't be surprised to find that Werenski's playing injured. They've lost a bunch of key-ish guys to injuries, like Damon Severson having an excellent season before his year ended in Montreal. And that's the other thing as well. The Blue Jackets went through a terrible streak of, I think, 4 games straight. They lost a player to injury mid-game. And not insignificant guys either. Like Olivier has been one of the heart and soul guys for this team. He, I think, is like 5th on the team in goals because everyone is slumping right now. He back-to-back 15-goal seasons for Mathieu Olivier, who they acquired mostly just to punch people and not let the team be bullied. Like a real turnaround for him. He's done for the year. A couple of other guys as well. Lundstrom's hurt. Voronkov's probably done for the year. Marchment is in and out of the lineup with, injuries and whatnot. Like a bunch of guys are injured. Unfortunately, guys all around the league are injured. Still not a good enough excuse, right? And so I'm just kind of left looking at this last, 4-5 games. I thought they played well in Montreal for the most part, but a late game-winning goal, that's the end of it. Then they played the Sharks and looked diabolically bad, and it's been downhill since then. They had a franchise record for fewest shots on goal a couple of games ago with 10. In the last 2 games, they've, I think, mustered up a whole 26 shots on goal in total. They look like they don't care. And I know that that's not true, because I know that hockey players are wired to be maniacally competitive regardless of what's happening, right? And I talk about how it looks like nobody wants it and it looks like nobody cares. And I know that that's not true, because hockey players on average are sociopaths that don't know how to stop caring if it kills them, right? But they just look awful. And that's the thing, if they were playing these games and losing because the other team was just better, I'd feel a lot better about it, right? And it's not like, of this losing streak, they've played Carolina twice, they've played Boston, they've played Montreal. 3 playoff teams, 4 games, 3 very good teams, right? There's no shame in losing to the Carolina Hurricanes. It happens to the best of us, right? But if you're going to lose to the Hurricanes, then you at least had better put up an effort. Do not, 10 shots on goal against the worst goalie in the league. What are we doing here, right? That's what bothers me. Is it's not the losing, it's the way they look while they're losing, and I genuinely don't know. I don't know what the reason is, because nothing's really changed. You know, they didn't look great even before the Severson injury, which was really the real catalyst here was the Severson injury. I think is that shook the defense pairings up and they struggled to recover. Losing Olivier has shaken up the bottom six. The top six has been cold for a while, and the lines aren't working, but they continue to put the same lines out there. I have problems with the way that this is an evergreen NHL coach problem, right? I'm sure you dealt with this as well. I'm sure every team deals with this. Is they preach accountability, but only for some players, right?
Yes.
Young players, like less established players, if they make mistakes, they get punished. Veterans, guys that play the right way, are allowed to make all of the mistakes they want, but because they do it the right way, they get to continue to play on the second line. And I'm not singling any one player out here, or I certainly could, but the Blue Jackets have a lot of veterans right now that are ice cold, that are losing their minutes badly, and young players that are winning their minutes are getting benched for not playing the right way. And it makes me feel insane. So the short version of this answer, before I yell for another 20 minutes and we have to cut this down massively, is I don't know why they're slumping. There's a bunch of different reasons, and none of them are good ones. So here we are.
Who are some of the leaders on this team that you think have the best chance of helping them change this problem, dig out of this hole?
I mean, that's the problem, right? Is I'm looking at this team and I'm like, okay, well, the captain, Boone Jenner, has been one of the worst culprits. But he tries, he plays the right way, he hits, he forechecks, etc., etc. So he gets to keep his place in the lineup despite, credit where it's due, he was one of the better Blue Jackets in this loss to Winnipeg on Saturday night. That second line of Jenner, Monahan, Garland was actually the best line, far and away. The only line that didn't lose their minutes. So, credit where it's due, he had a good game. But he's had a string of bad games and has not been criticized for it at all by basically anyone inside the organization, it feels like. I don't know whether there's internal criticism or what, but I'm not looking at, I don't think Boone Jenner is going to turn this ship around, right? Like, Zach Werenski is an option, but frankly, and I love Werenski, and I think he should win the Norris because he's had an excellent season, he has looked pedestrian for 2 weeks. And pedestrian Zach Werenski is still a pretty good player, right? But now that he's stopped scoring at this meteoric rate that he was scoring at before, suddenly a lot of the other things are looking worse as well. He's never been the best defensive guy in the world, right? He is a perfectly fine option in his own zone, but he's not, Jacob Slavin. He's not Nicholas Hjalmarsson, if I can remember a guy from a decade and a half ago. But he was fine. And now that he's not scoring, I think everything else is looking worse. So I also think he's been injured. I think he's playing through something, so that's not a help. It's gonna have to be those kind of guys that need to step up, and I don't know if they will, either because fatigue, injury, like Monahan should be a leader on this team, but he's been playing injured all season and looked better for a time and now doesn't look great again. Kromachenko, supposed to be one of the young leaders on this team in terms of offense, I think injured. Is Adam Fantilli going to step up? He certainly looks like he's trying. He didn't have a great game the last couple of games, but he at least looked like he cared, which is frankly not nothing at this point. So there's a bunch of options here. I don't really love any of them as solutions. If everyone stepped up, that would be great. But I don't think that Adam Fantilli by himself can drag this team into a playoff spot simply by wanting to do better, right?
Does this expose a leadership issue on this roster?
Listen, you said it, not me, right? I have been somewhat vocal. I think that there needs to be a captaincy change in Columbus, regardless of whether Boone Jenner is back next season. Unfortunately, I don't think this organization will take this. If he's there, he's the captain. They are not going to take the C away from him. Should they? That's another story. So, Zach Werenski, I think, has been groomed to be the successor to Boone Jenner for a couple of years now. He was basically the captain last year when Boone Jenner missed a ton of time. The year before that, when Boone Jenner missed a ton of time, you can see the pattern that's developing here. But I think the consensus was that Boone Jenner was going to leave, and then they were going to give Zach Werenski the C. Unfortunately, it looks like Boone Jenner, well, I say unfortunately, that sounds harsh, but it looks like Boone Jenner might be staying, and I don't think this organization will want to take the C away from him, because that would be bad optics about teammates, and I think this organization is wary of potential bad PR at this point after the Mike Babcock thing a couple of years ago that went just so badly for everyone involved. I think this team is like, no, we can't possibly have any bad press for any reason ever. So I think that they're going to keep Boone Jenner in free agency. And I think he's going to keep the C. And I think this leadership problem might continue for a little while longer, which is frustrating for many reasons.
No doubt. Jay, it's going to be an interesting finish to the season. Why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Well, tragically, we're back to a point where I feel like I can't, in good conscience, recommend that people pay attention to the Blue Jackets, because frankly, they don't deserve it. But if you too hate yourself, you can find Locked On Blue Jackets wherever you get podcasts. We are wherever you get Locked On NHL. We're over on YouTube as well. You can find the show at LO_Blue Jackets on Twitter as well.
All right, Jay, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Go.
Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at Game Time. There's nothing like being in an NBA arena, the crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets, though, that part hasn't always been so simple. That's why Game Time has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast without the hassle. It puts the advantage back where it belongs, with the fans. I love that you see the all-in price up front. There are no surprise fees at checkout. And the view from your seat is one of my favorite features. You get a panoramic view from your seat before you purchase the tickets, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. And zone deals really stand out. You choose the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today, and remember, it's gametime.co, not gametime.com.